Okay. Good morning, everybody. Are you able to hear? Just testing the sound. Is the sound and video
Yes,
all
sir.
right? Okay, very good.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. Let's get started with what we are doing. We had looked at the MIPS addressing modes. I'll just summarize that. In the immediate addressing, we have the operand as part of the instruction itself. So we have the opcode, we have the source operand, the target operand, and then there is a immediate operand. In the register addressing, in the MIPS encoding, we have a opcode, we have a source, and there is another RT, and there is a destination. So there are two source operands, RS, RT, and there is a destination. But you may ask why not have RD first destination, because that's how we write the assembly code. And then RSRT. Okay, maybe they wanted to have the convention of typical assembly program. And therefore, we have first the destination, R1, R2, R3. Means R2, R3 are the source operand and R1 is the destination operand. But the encoding is different. Why they did like this, I don't know. And they have also a function here. So the function is basically the type of operation to be performed. For example, addition may be 1, subtraction may be 2, etc. And then the base addressing, where we take the address and add that to the register. So this is the offset basically. The address is the offset. And then we have a base register. We add that and then we get the address in the memory. And as I was mentioning that typically all computers are byte addressable. And you can get half word using 2 bytes, a full word, etc. And then the PC relative addressing, like branch and so on, there we add the offset given as part of the instruction. Let's say we have branch equal to, we check these two registers if they're equal to, and then we take the offset and then add that to the PC and then we get the address. And sometimes if anybody has question, you're free to ask, just unmute and ask. And as I said that questions are appreciated. And sometimes we have these jump instructions. These are called as the jump instruction. No need to raise hand. Please unmute and ask. Anybody has difficulty, please unmute yourself and ask the question.
Sir, one thing that for the PC, sir, is it incremented after the instruction is executed or before the instruction is executed?
See, the instruction is fetched, okay? So as soon as the instruction is fetched, the first thing done is increment the program counter before even the instruction completes.
Sir, but in case of jump instruction, then sir, won't it jump to the point which is to the instruction which is just after the address that it is pointing to?
That's how we have to compute. That's how we have to compute. Let's say we are executing instruction 100, okay? Now,
Okay.
as soon as the instruction is fetched, the program counter is incremented. And then if we add 10 to that, it will be 111. Something like that. As we write the program, it will become clear. All right?
Sir.
But the program
Okay,
counter is immediately incremented after the instruction is fetched. It will become more clear when we look at the hardware details. Right now we're looking only at the instruction set architecture. So jump is also called as the long jump because see here the address part is much longer. So in the PC relative addressing, we only give the offset with respect to the PC. But in the jump, we give a long address here, which is concatenated with the bits that are not there. See, address will be 26 bits. So 6 bits will be taken from the PC and will be added here. It will become clear today as we proceed about the long jump. So these are the addressing modes for MIPS. And then we were in the last class discussing about the programming where we wanted to write small programs. And one thing that we need to look out is when there are memory operands. Because memory operands, we have to first get them into the register and then operate on them. Just look at this C code segment. We have a variable G which will be assigned value based on the variable H and an array whose ninth element is A8. So we want to add the ninth element of the array to H and assign that to G. Now already we have G in we have assigned the register S1 to G, S2 to H. H value is already present in S2 and the base address of the array is in S3. Now to write this program, we will have to find where exactly the ninth element of the array resides. Then only we can write the program. But then we know that every element of array, this is an integer array, every element is 4 bytes long. And the index 8, that is the ninth element, requires an offset of 32 because there are 4 bytes per element of the integer array. If we look at the picture here, the element 0 may be this, 10014 4 may be something, at location 8 may be something, and we want the ninth element, which will be the base address plus 32. The first element will be base address per 0, second will be plus 4, and the ninth will be plus 32. And the base address is in S3. And then the program is simple here. Once we compute this, we write offset 32 and the base address in S3. We load word in the temporary register 0 and then add H in S2 and the one that is fetched A8, and then we generate the result in G. So this is our simplest memory operand program. We'll do bit more complex programming. We'll not write like hundreds or thousands lines of code, but maybe 10, 20, 30 lines of code. And we will translate C program into MIPS assembly and the MIPS assembly back into C program to get a better understanding of the assembly programming. And those who are interested, they can download the MIPS assembler called as SPIM, S-P-I-M, just MIPS written in the reverse way. S-P-I-M, you can download on your laptop, doesn't take too much space. You can write the programs, assembly programs and run. That's a good way to learn assembly program. But then in this course, since we are not giving much time to the assembly programming, just 2-3 classes. So don't really expect that you'll have to download the SPIM assembler and write programs. But those who are going to work in this line, if you write assembly code using the assembler and compile, that will give you good insight and also enrich your CV. So let's write another program. So here the array A, we want to add the 9th element to the variable present, the variable h, and then store it in the 13th element of the array. So how do we write? If it was a CISC processor, we might have written something like this. 12, 4, 48. So this is the destination. And then these are the source. 8, 4, 32. S2. And we could have written, but here we'll have to first fetch A8 into temporary register 0, add S2, which is H, to T0, and then store back T0 in the 13th element of the array, which is 42S3. So this is our second memory operand code snippet, very simple. Now let's just get a bit more insight into register versus memory. Just look at this diagram that the ALU takes register operands. It doesn't take memory operands. And also these two instruction memory and data memory that are written here, they are not really the main memory. They are the cache inside the processor. We had told that earlier. Now, even though these are cache, the register is faster. Maybe 10 or 20 times faster. So the question that naturally arises here is that how is the register faster than the cache, even though both of them are in the processor, both are memory elements. And we are trying to give a very simple answer last time. We said that, see, in the cache, these are organized differently and these are large. The register, we just index into the register number. There may be 32 of them. We just index and then we get the content of that. It is faster for that reason. We'll see details, more details as we discuss the memory portion a little later. But it's not only that the registers are faster than the memory. That is one reason why we should have the data stored in registers. But there is another important reason. The reason is that if data is in memory, we will have to do a load store, which is again another instruction execution. So there is a blow on two counts. One is that, okay, memory is low. Second is that we have to also have an extra instruction. So it's a good idea to have the data present in registers as much as best possible. And that is an important topic in compiler writing called as register optimization. The main idea there is that we want to use the setup registers very efficiently. All the data that are needed should be present in the registers, and the data that is not getting needed anymore, those are written back to the memory. So only the less frequently used variable at any point in time in the program execution are written to the memory. The frequently used data items, it's advantageous to have them in the register. And that is the register optimization. In compiler, it's one of the important topics. Now let's look at a little bit about the immediate operands. We said that the immediate operand, this is the decimal number 4, is the immediate operand in this assembly instruction. Add immediate 4 to the contents of S3 and store in S3. So basically increment S3 by 4. We can also have a negative constant here. So the immediate instructions are advantageous compared to storing 4 in the memory. Like we can store data in the memory. That was another option, that 4 could have been in the memory. And then we could have fetched and executed. But here it is part of the instruction. So it's very fast. And the only thing is that the size of this data cannot be very large, because we typically specify this using some 16 bits, 2 bytes. We'll see the instruction organization. So there is a restriction on the size of the immediate operand. But fortunately, the most common occurrence of the constants are small numbers, like increment something by 1, add 10 to something, etc. These are small numbers. So we should use the immediate operand, and that complies to an important principle: make the common case first. Can anybody name the principle that we are stating here? Make the common case first. What is the name of this principle? Very good. So what's the name? Who answered?
Ambuj.
Ambuj. Okay, very good. We discussed this. And the name of the principle was Amdahl's law, where common case, the one that is most frequently present, that should run first. And here, all the small constants we use as immediate arguments, immediate operands, and that's how we get the program to run fast. We don't store small constants in memory, we write it part of the instruction. Now, before we can do some serious programming, let's just, for a couple of minutes, refresh what we already know. Maybe in your first year, you had done in the programming data structure and maybe elsewhere. Just refreshing in a couple of minutes in case you have forgotten. An unsigned binary integer stored in this way, right? It's a positional number system where each position of the bit defines the value of that number, and the range is 0 to 2 to the power n minus 1. And to convert, I am sure all of you will be able to do it. It is 11 is represented in this 32-bit string. And using 32 bits, the number representable is between 0 to this, right? This unsigned binary integer. And for 2's complement integer, we know that the most significant bit is the sign bit. And we give a weight 2 to the power n minus 1 and just observe the minus here. So if the MSB is 0, then it's a positive number. But if it is 1, then we have this huge negative number here, minus 2 to the power n minus 1, and these are all positive, see here. So we need to add this to get the negative number. And now we can see that the most positive number is 2 to the power n minus 1 minus 1, because the most significant bit is 0 for positive numbers. And therefore, if you evaluate all this, the rest, it will be 2 to the power n minus 1 minus 1. On the other hand, the most negative number is minus 2 to the power n minus 1, because this itself, the most significant bit itself, is minus 2 to the power n minus 1. The rest are zeros. Now, if we want to evaluate this number string and we write this values here for each bit, minus 1 to the power 2 to the power 31 minus 1, okay, and then 0 into 2 to the power 0, you find it is minus 4 decimal. But then it's a very complicated evaluation. We don't normally evaluate like this. If we observe that it is a negative number indicated by its significant bit, most significant bit, we convert it to 2's complement and get the positive number and write minus that, because this way evaluating is a bit complicated. And then you can see here what is the largest range of values representable. Now let's have some observations on this 2's complement. Okay, one observation is that, okay, this we had already said that if the MSB is 1, it is a negative number. If it is 0, it is a positive number. 2 to the power n minus 1 cannot be represented because we are not using MSB. The rest of the bits you cannot represent 2 to the power n minus 1. And also another thing is that the non-negative numbers, that is 0 and positive numbers, they have the same unsigned and 2's complement representation. So all positive numbers and 0, they have the same representation for unsigned as well as 2's complement representation. Now let's look at some specific 2's complement numbers. So if we have number 0, what will be its representation in 2's complement? Can anybody answer?
0 only.
Yeah, all zeros. Very good, Bikram. Very good. All zeros. Very good. How do we represent minus 1?
All ones.
All ones.
All ones. Does everybody agree to that?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So that is Varun. Now, how do we represent the most negative number in 2's complement?
MSB is 1 and rest are 0.
L0.
Rest are zeros. Very good. Now, how do we represent the most positive number?
MSB 0.
First bit is 0 and all ones.
Okay, good, good. So MSB is 0, rest are 1 because these are all positive. Now, how do we do the signed negation? We do the complement each bit and add 1, right? That you know from your first year days. But why? Why do we complement each bit and add 1? Complement means we just reverse. Flip ones to zeros and zeros to ones. The idea here is that if we take a number and its complement, the places where x has 0, x bar has 1. And therefore, when we add them, all will be 1. All bits will be 1. Does everybody agree with me, or anybody wants to question this? I am saying that when we flip the bits, the places of x where it is 0, it will be 1 in x bar and vice versa. So they will be totally complement of each other. 1 will be, and when we add them, it will be all ones. I hope that everybody agrees to that. And we know what this means. All ones is minus 1. And therefore, we can write that x bar, that is the complement of a number, plus 1 gives the negative of that number. So to negate a number, we complement it and add 1. So this is a simple proof of that. And we can use it. We want to negate 2. We just flip all bits up 2 and then add 1 here and get this number. Now let's look about the sign extension, because this also will be using in the rest of the programs that we'll be writing. Suppose we have a 16-bit immediate constant and we are storing it in a 32-bit integer in memory. So how do we convert a 16-bit to 32-bit? At the same time, taking care to preserve the numeric value. We can't append all zeros to the MSBs. That will give a wrong result. It will change its value. There are many places where we will be doing this, where we will be upgrading a small number a small sized number, 16 bit or 26 bit and so on, into 32 bit, in odd immediate, in load byte, load half word, branch equal to, branch not equal to, in all these we give small constants as operands. And we want to upgrade that into 32 bit representation. The rule here is that we need to replicate the sign bit to the left. If the most significant is 1, we make the upgraded representation all ones to the left. If the MSB is observed to be 0, then we make it all zeros, all upgraded bits 0. Just to give an example, if we have +2 is, let's say, this is the representation in 8 bit. Now we want to convert it to 16 bit. Then we looked at the most significant 0, and then we just extend the sign extend rest of the bits. And for -2, we observe the most significant to be 1. And then we replicate that 1 in the rest of the bits in the upgraded representation. But why does it work? It will be nice if somebody gives a simple proof that why does sign replication doesn't change the value of the number. Please work this out, anybody, I mean all of you, whoever can, simple proof, simplest proof. It's not very hard proof. In our book that we are following, it's not there, even though it just says sign extension doesn't change the value of the number. Please mail me your answer. We'll consider that in our grades and so on. Now, there are also the logical operations. Shift left logical, which is equivalent to the C, this operator in Java. Okay, C and Java have identical operators. Can observe here, right shift also, they are same shift right logical, and same operator in C and Java. Bitwise OR also, OR and OR immediate, and immediate, and bitwise NOT is actually the NOR operator in the MIPS assembly. We'll see that why it is NOR in the MIPS assembly, just 1 or 2 slides away, and the same operator in C and Java. We will be translating C code to MIPS assembly and MIPS assembly back to C code. The AND operation, this is mainly used to mask some bits. We want to check in maybe some encoding or something that what are the 4 middle order bits in a word. What we'll do is we'll keep those bits 1 and the rest are 0, and we'll do this operation AND T1, T2. We'll store the mask in one of the register, and then once we compute the AND there, the selected bits will appear in T0. Just to give an example, if we have some number in T2 and we want to just get these 4 bits here, we will make all these bits 1 here and the rest are 0, and we'll AND with that and we extract those bits here. So this is a useful AND operation for extracting bits in some positions which we are interested. The OR operation, it lets us set bits, some bits we can set. So the number of the bits which we want to set, we'll store it in T2, and then we'll OR with the T1 and we'll have the set bit here. Let's say in this example, we want to set these 2 bits, these 4 bits, and the other bits we want to keep as it is. So we just made this one, and finally we find that those bits are set. Okay, something like that. Now the NOT operation. The NOT operation also is a very useful operation. We'll be used it many times. change 0 to 1 and 1 to 0. But MIPS does not support NOT. It supports a NOR instruction, which is a 3 operand instruction. And we know that A nor B is not A or B. So if we have B as 0, then the NOR operation we can use to get the NOT operation. So we use the 0 register, and then we use the NOR with the 0 register as one of the operands, and we get the NOT. We flip the bits. Now there are few more conditional operators that we will be using. Set the destination register to 1 if less than one register is less than other. So it is SLT, set result to 1 if less than, otherwise set to 0. Let's look at this. SLT, if the RS is less than RT, then we set RD to 1. Otherwise, if RS is equal to RT or RS is greater than RT and so on, RD will be 0. Similarly, we have this instruction SLTI. SLT, set less than immediate. So here we give a constant here and we check RS with the constant. If RS is less than constant, then RT will be set to 1, otherwise it will be set to 0. So these two are also very useful instruction. In our programs, we will use it frequently to write loops, conditionals, and so on. Now let's write a very small program, a conditional statement, if then else. If A less than B, increment I, else decrement I. This is the small instruction that we want to write in assembly. And for simplicity, we assume that A, B, and I are already present in the register S1, S2, S3. So this is the diagram. It shows that S1 contains A, S2 contains B, and S3 contains I. How do we write this program? A less than B, if A less than B, increment I, otherwise decrement I. So we compare A, B, set less than comes useful here. A and B we compare, we set a register. If A less than B, so we'll use SLT, set less than. S1 and S2 we compare. If S1 is less than S2, then T0 will be set. And if T0 is set, then this will return a false, branch not equal to 0. If T0 is not equal to 0, we compare with 0, then we just execute the else part. Otherwise, we just execute the next instruction. So we just add here A less than B, and otherwise we just subtract 1. So this is the conditional statement. We use SLT along with BNE and jump. Now to recap, we have the source operands. The last two are the source operand. The first one is the destination operand. Add, subtract, and we have load word where 100 is the offset and S2 is the base. We add 2 to 100 and then get that from the memory into S1. Similarly, store word, we have the base register and the offset. Now let's look at the instruction formats little bit before we start write longer code and procedure calls and so on. We'll write more bigger programs, but before that, let's look at the format. The R type are the register operands, and here the destination register is encoded in 5 bits because there are 32 of them. The source and the two source registers are encoded using 5 bit. Any of the 32 GPRs can be source registers. The opcode has 6 bits, and then these two, because the same opcode with a function bit here can mean different things. For example, if we have ARD, there are several types of ARD, like subtract is also ARD and so on. And this is the shift instruction. We will use the shift amount, otherwise it is unused. The immediate instruction, one of the operand is the immediate value here, and we have a the destination will be stored, okay, it will be RD here, and the source, and this is the immediate instruction. So RT is the destination register for I type. We have written here I type, RT is the destination register. And for the other instructions, load store, we have 16-bit offset here, and similarly the base destination. And for long jumps, that is J instructions, we have 26-bit target address. And as I was saying that to get the actual address, we need to take the PC and extract these 26 to 31 bits and add that to the target address to get the actual address to which it will jump. It will become clear. We'll look at more examples. Now these are some examples of the instruction formats. For ARD, we have the opcode 0 and the function code is 32. For subtract, opcode is 0, function code is 34. And S1 register is encoded using 18. S2 is encoded using 18, S2 in 19, and so on. And for load word, we have the offset here using the 16 bits. And for store word, we have encoded using a different opcode and the registers and the offset. Now the jump instruction, we have a 26-bit address to jump, which we convert to 32-bit by extracting 6-bit from the PC and appending the higher order bits to this 26-bit. If we have J10, and PC and append. Today we have a quiz coming up. I think the quiz will be about 14 minutes. It's 14 minutes. Tridhara, are we ready with the quiz?
Yes, sir. We are ready.
Okay, great. So since it is 14 minutes quiz, we'll just stop here. Please attempt your quiz and please try to submit before the time. You will get a prompt before the quiz completes, but please complete on time. Otherwise, we are getting these messages that we're not able to submit, time is over. So don't wait till the last second. Please submit as soon as the announcement is made about in the start also there will be announcement, and end immediately on the announcement, please submit. So best of luck. Please attempt the quiz today. We'll stop here. Thank you.